Most people think Iran's economy is a crumbling mess of sanctions and breadlines. They're wrong. This is the story of how the 1979 revolution triggered a $100 billion wealth heist, creating a shadow state of tax-exempt monopolies called Bonyads. Today, these hidden conglomerates control half of Iran's GDP, answering only to the supreme leader. They don't just run the country's industries. They are the secret bank account that funds Iran's proxy wars across the entire globe. In 1979, the world watched a political revolution. But behind the scenes, it was the greatest asset seizure in human history. The wealth of an entire monarchy was stripped away and handed to a new elite. Welcome to Fortune and Ruin. Today, we peel back the curtain on who actually owns Iran and how they've turned a sanctioned economy into a war chest that the West simply cannot touch. To understand the shadow state of 2026, we have to go back to the Iranian Revolution and ascent of this regime. Before 1979, Iran was a playground for the Pahlavi dynasty. The Shah and a circle of 50 industrialist families, men like the Kayami brothers who founded Iran Khodro, or the Lajavardi family who built the Beshar Industrial Group, owned nearly everything. When the Shah fled, he didn't just leave a palace. He left behind a sophisticated industrial machine worth an estimated $20 billion in 1979 dollars. In most revolutions, these assets are nationalized. But the Islamic Republic did something far more clever. They created Bonyads, charitable foundations that operate as para-governmental states. The most powerful, the Bonyad-e Mostazafan, Foundation of the Oppressed, was built specifically to house the confiscated assets of the Shah's Pahlavi Foundation. By the mid-1980s, this single charity had become a sprawling empire. It controlled 203 mining and manufacturing firms, 472 commercial farms, and nearly 3,000 real estate holdings. It was a black box. These assets were classified as public properties belonging to the supreme leader, meaning they were never part of the official government budget. They didn't pay taxes, and they didn't have to show their books to the parliament. This was the birth of the military Bonyad complex. In the name of redistributing wealth to the downtrodden, the regime built a secondary economy, a shadow kingdom that thrived while the public sector withered under the weight of the Iran-Iraq War. Why does this matter today? Because in 2026, these bonyads are no longer just charities. They are multi-billion-dollar conglomerates that crowd out every private citizen. Originally founded to manage abandoned property, it is now an empire worth over $95 billion. It owns stakes in nearly every sector, from the Tosi Etemad Mobin Consortium, which controls the country's telecommunications, to Barkat Pharmaceutical, the giant that handles the nation's vaccine production. But the real shock comes from the 2026 budget. As the Rial collapsed to over 1.5 million per dollar, the government faced a choice: cut spending or squeeze the people. They chose the latter. The 2026 draft budget includes a staggering 63% increase in tax revenues. Think about that. While the Bonyads remain tax-exempt and enjoy subsidized exchange rates of 285,000 rials per dollar, the average Iranian citizen is being hit with a massive ideology tax. The government is effectively liquidating the wealth of the middle class to fill the budget gaps left by the tax-free shadow state. This isn't an economy. It's a massive wealth transfer mechanism designed to keep the regime's core institutions liquid while the public drowns in inflation. If the Bonyads are the bank, the IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, is the muscle that runs the machinery. In 2026, the mask has finally slipped. The Iranian government recently slashed its own oil revenue projections by nearly half. Why? Because they are handing the oil directly to the Guard. For the fiscal year starting March 2026, the IRGC is set to receive a combined $23 billion in state resources. This includes $13 billion in direct oil proceeds, meaning the IRGC is now responsible for exporting roughly 600,000 barrels of oil per day and keeping the cash. Their engineering arm, Khatam al-Anbiya, has become the nation's ultimate contractor. They build the nuclear sites, the dams, and the tunnels, but they also control the digital border. Through companies like Irancell, the IRGC monitors the very data they use to suppress dissent. They have built a self-funding military-industrial complex that operates outside the law, outside the budget, and outside the reach of the people. But the fortune of the IRGC doesn't just come from what they build, it comes from what they consume. In 2026, Iran is facing a terminal environmental collapse, and if you follow the dry riverbeds, you find the guards' fingerprints. For decades, IRGC-linked firms like Khatam al-Anbiya have treated the country's geography as a limitless ATM. They have built over 600 dams, often in areas where they make zero ecological sense. Why? Because a dam is a multi-billion-dollar concrete contract that is impossible to audit. By diverting water from ethnic minority regions like Khuzestan to politically connected industrial farms in the Central Plateau, they have effectively monetized the nation's water supply. The ruin is now visible from space. Lake Urmia, once the largest salt lake in the Middle East, has shriveled to less than 10% of its original volume. In early 2026, internal reports from the Ministry of Energy warned that land subsidence in Tehran has reached critical levels. The city is literally sinking by 25 centimeters a year because the aquifers are being pumped dry to fuel IRGC-owned agribusinesses. When the people protest this ecological looting, the guard flips the kill switch. In January 2026, the IRGC-controlled telecommunications monopoly implemented a total digital lockdown. This isn't just a censorship tool, it's an economic weapon. Each hour of a total blackout costs the Iranian economy roughly $1.5 million. But that cost isn't shared equally. While the IRGC's shadow banks use dedicated, high-speed fiber lines to keep the ghost fleet moving, the 700,000 small businesses that rely on Instagram and Telegram for their survival are wiped out instantly. By controlling the water and the web, the shadow state has achieved the ultimate form of leverage. They have made survival a gift that only they can grant. If you want to drink or if you want to dial, you have to play by their rules. This isn't just a dictatorship anymore. It's a landlord state that is burning its own house down for the insurance money. But what happens when the US blocks the dollar? You move to the blockchain. In 2025 and 2026, Iran became a global hub for state-backed crypto mining. By using stranded energy from subsidized power plants, the IRGC generates Bitcoin that is clean, meaning it has never touched a Western bank. The heart of this operation is Nobitex, Iran's largest crypto exchange. With over 15 million users, it's a lifeline for citizens, but for the IRGC, it's a washing machine. Blockchain researchers recently identified over 5,000 crypto addresses linked directly to the IRGC, which have moved an estimated $3 billion since 2023. They use these digital assets to buy dual-use technology and drone parts from suppliers in East Asia. By the time the transaction is flagged, the wallet is empty and the parts are already in a warehouse in Isfahan. It is a digital bunker that makes traditional sanctions look like a relic of the 20th century. To keep that $23 billion war chest full, you need to move oil past the U.S. Treasury. Enter the ghost fleet. As of March 2026, Iran's dark fleet has grown to over 500 vessels. These are maritime zombies which use AIS spoofing, broadcasting fake GPS locations to make it look like they are in the South China Sea while they are actually loading crude at the Karg Island terminal. But the oil is only half the battle. You have to get the money back. This is where the shadow banking network comes in. In late 2025, FinCEN identified $9 billion in suspicious transactions flowing through U.S. correspondent accounts. The trail leads to shell companies in Hong Kong and exchange houses in Dubai. Firms like Amido Trading and Future Resource Trading create phantom shipments, fake invoices for food or medicine, to justify moving millions of dollars. This money never reaches the Iranian people. It stays in the shadow, funding the Houthi networks in Yemen and luxury real estate for the elite. While the Iranian Rial dies, the shadow state is buying up the Mediterranean. We are often told that Iran is a failing state, but it isn't failing for everyone. For the Bonyads, the IRGC, and the shadow bankers, the 1979 revolution was the most successful business merger in history. They have successfully decoupled the survival of the regime from the survival of the economy. As of March 2026, capital flight has reached a record $36 billion. The That is 10% of the country's GDP literally running for the exits. The elite are building lifeboats in Dubai and London, while the Iranian people are left on a sinking ship. They haven't just stolen the country's wealth, they've stolen its future. If you found this story about Iran's notorious economic war machine intriguing, subscribe to Fortune and Ruin as we unearth more such untold stories.